Chris Wiernicki is doing triple duty today, and that's after his keynote remarks. I kindly ask him to, Chris, don't go far, because you are moderating the next panel. So if I can ask Roel, Philippos, Ioanna, and Charis to take your seats.
Okay, Nicholas, you are really putting me to work today. So actually, let me go ahead and start. I want to give as much time to the panelists as possible. I do want to kind of come back and again thank Minister Kiklias and Charge d'Affaires Joshua Huck for your inspiring words, your insights, and your perspectives. And I think we'll talk a lot about that over the course of this program, but shipping is actually the catalyst that begins to bring together national security, economic security, and energy security. And actually that underpins two shipping stories. One is shipping for shipping, which is the decarbonization of shipping, which we're going to talk about actually today and at this panel. And the other one is, I think as it was elegantly put, shipping for the world as an enabler for global energy. So this morning we're going to talk about the decarbonization of shipping. The panel is titled The Debate on Net Zero, Navigating Between Ambition and Reality. And we're going to talk a little bit about where we are today in the context of essentially four big questions. Are we where we need to be? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? And what do we need to do? And I'm very, very delighted to have such a tremendous panel. I mean, when I look at the panel and I look at the personalities, and I've had the pleasure of knowing most of them, this is a tremendous and varied leadership panel. It's got a tremendous representation. We've got regulators, we've got owners, and we've got industry associations. And I think we're going to be in for a treat. They're going to provide a unique perspective and insight into what are those challenges and opportunities in front of us. Let me introduce the panel, and I am going to apologize in advance if I didn't exactly get your name perfect. So, but I am dyslexic, so I do have a hard time sometimes. Mr. Roel Hoenders? Okay. Head of Climate Action and Clean Air from IMO, from the Marine Environmental Division of IMO. Mr. Philis, who I've gotten to know quite well over the last week. Really appreciate you coming. Philippos is Chairman and CEO of Lemissoler Navigation, but he's also past President of the European Shipowners Association from 2022 to 2024. Of course, we have Ms. Ioanna Procopiou, Managing Director of Prominence Maritime, President Designate of BIMCO, and a member of the board of UGS. And at the end, we have Ms. Charis. Help me out. Got it. Chief Strategy Officer for Starbuck, which is a publicly listed NASDAQ company. So let me go ahead and start. We've given the panel some questions, but I actually would just like to start, and maybe I'll start with Ioanna first. Just based on kind of where we are, what you've seen, a lot of discussions over the last couple of weeks. We know kind of what the calculus is to get to net zero by 2050 in terms of the macro level, in terms of what's needed, as well as kind of what's at the deck plate level relative to the importance of fuel, but the importance also of energy efficiency and voyage performance. Ioanna, why don't you lead us off? And I'll ask this question to all the panelists. Just give us a sense of your perspective and insight, and how do you see this thing shaping up?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having us here. Let me start by saying that regulation should offer feasible, high-impact solutions with minimum distraction and proven benefits. Good regulation can make any industry flourish, and bad regulation can destroy industries, like we've seen in the past with the European shipbuilding that was subsequently lost to the Far East and cost the European taxpayers a lot of money. Us in shipping, we need global regulations. We need to have a stable regulatory framework We need long-term planning because from the time that we order a ship till the time that its useful life is over, it's about 25 years of life of the ship plus another 2-3 years from the signing. So we're talking about a 20-year horizon. So we need long-term planning, and we need regulations that are not going to make our investments obsolete. Let's now move a little bit to the past. We used to have first the invention, then they would test it, then they would implement it, and then they would regulate it. Now, due to the climate crisis, we have everything in reverse. So we have the regulations in place, but we don't have any means of complying with those. I want to say a few words about IMO. IMO has been instrumental in shaping our industry since 1948. There have been many very good regulations and conventions like SOLAS, MARPOL, STCW that focus on safety, efficiency, sustainability, and aim at connecting people and markets. And we would need IMO because it has a global reach, and shipping is very much committed to IMO. Moving on now to our industry. Our industry is essential for food and energy security, as we heard earlier. And for many countries, it's the only way to connect to the rest of the world and to the global markets. It is 60 times less energy demanding than air transportation and 20 times less demanding than land transportation. According to Draghi report, it's one of the hardest industries to abate, which means shipping and aviation are the two hardest industries to decarbonize. Nonetheless, it is our obligation, and we are faced with a great opportunity to make meaningful steps towards decarbonization. There is the political will, there's the public perception in place, and we need to make sure that we get it right. I'm going to pause here and give the opportunity to the rest of the panel.
Actually, Charis, why don't you pick it up?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the Capital Link team for inviting me here today. Now, two weeks ago, I was at the London International Shipping Week. Roel was there with me. We were presented with the 2025 edition of the Climate in Action Shipping Report, where they basically track the progress of scalable zero-emission fuels by 2030. This is an initiative that was that started at COP26 from the UN High-Level Climate Champions, and the conclusions of the report were clear in terms of both demand and supply of green fuels not meeting the target of 5% uptake by 2030. Now, why is demand and supply of green fuels lagging behind? For demand to be in place, there needs to be incentives for ship owners to make the investment. And today, we're faced with a situation where we do not have regulatory clarity. Yes, the net zero framework was approved a few months ago, but it still needs to be verified. And at the same time, we also have important pieces of the puzzle which are missing. For example, life cycle assessment of the different fuels, rewards mechanism that will incentivize ship owners to make the investment. And this is a very important point in the sense that there is an important price gap when comparing today prices of fossil fuels with green fuels. I will just mention an example and give the floor to the rest of the panelists to speak. It is very important to note that fuels like methanol and ammonia, they have a much lower energy density than fossil fuels. So to compensate for the energy density of 1 ton of HFO, we need more than 2 tons of ammonia or methanol. Now, of course, we cannot predict the prices in the future, but using the IMO's impact assessment numbers, where HFO is projected to be at a little less than $500 per ton, and methanol and ammonia are projected to be more than $1,000 per ton. This means for an energy equivalent of 1 ton HFO, we have a cost of more than $2,000 for methanol or ammonia. So this is 4 times the cost of fuel consumption. So this is indicative that there is a big price gap, and this, of course, assuming that we have solved all other issues around safety, infrastructure, engine availability, etc. And it is very important that the regulation, once it is adopted, provides for a reward mechanism in order to cover this price gap and incentivize shipowners to make investments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Senator Harris. Philippos, why don't you give us your perspective? You're taking some bets right now, and I know you have a short game, mid game, and long game, but can you share with us kind of the thought process in terms of where you are and where you're going?
Do you mean I avoid to answer your initial question?
Sorry?
Please, to me, a different question now.
Yes.
Yes, but I will take the floor. First of all, thank you for having me here. I cannot remain silent. So I believe regulators, classification societies should remain neutral related to regulations and fuel selection. And today, I think I heard that ABS is promoting a specific fuel, which is not, to my understanding, correct. In any way, I'm involved in the decarbonization since maybe 15, 17 years. And I have been part of the discussion, the initial discussions of the 10 proposals back in early 2010, 12, around that, where European Union or Denmark, supported by Cyprus and Greece, had initiated the levy proposal, which was one of the proposals up to the last MEPC. I think we, the Westerns, missed our real role, and we didn't develop the proposal to the extent that will be accepted by IMO and the member states. And we have accepted an Asian proposal that IMO found more comprehensive and maybe better implementable. I think this is something that we don't like how it has been developed, but we have to work around the guidelines over the next year in order to make it more affordable. And I agree with Charis, because of the density, we need a lot of support based on the reward factor. And all the talks related to the reward factor will not be an incentive to the shipowners to take up alternative fuels, net zero fuels. So the current pace, I think, for decarbonization is not to the level we should have expected. Some of the fuels cannot be material in the mix if we want to achieve the IMO target by 2050 net zero. So I believe that the chain for development of green fuels, lack of demand, signals, and it's like a chicken and egg story. I think to have production of alternative fuel, net zero fuels, you need ships to take the fuel. If you don't have the ships, you don't have the infrastructure. So both have to move forward. And the regulators need to develop the reward factors and the incentives in order to accelerate the ordering of alternative fuel, dual fuel with net zero fuels vessels. Otherwise, we will be sitting here another 15 years discussing where we fail to decarbonize the industry. So my opinion is that we need bankable policies, long-dated off-take contracts for the fuels. We need contracts for differences as in derivative that may help this. We need carbon price floors because the price is market-driven, and if we don't have a floor, then we may see that the entire regulation will be a paper-driven regulation without or a greenwashing regulation. And then, as last, we need coordinated green corridors in order altogether to de-risk the private investments, both in production of the fuels as well as the shipbuilding, the investment on dual fuel ships. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippos. Roel, you're the quarterback. It's your game plan, it's your playbook. Can you give us some insight kind of from your perspective? Because it is a very neat perspective. Is how do you see where we are, where we're going, how we're going to get there, and kind of give us a glimpse into that short game, mid game, long game that you guys are working on.
Thank you, Chris, and very good morning, everyone. And let me start by correcting you, Chris. This is not my playbook, and I think this is really what is the key of the IMO. The IMO is you. It's the governments, the 176 governments that come together in the IMO to make global regulations. So it's not owned by me working in the secretariat. It's really owned by governments, by the industry, everyone who is involved in making the global regulations in the IMO. And that, as you know very well, and many of you have been around for many years, for decades, IMO has been doing for years. And I think when we look at energy efficiency, IMO has been quite successful. If you look at the energy efficiency regulations that exist today, that have been in place since 2013, with the first requirements on the EEDI, Design Index requirements for new build ships. Since then, the energy efficiency performance of the global fleet has improved by over 30%. And we know for a fact that there's still a lot of additional gains that can be made in terms of energy efficiency leading up to 2030, up to 15% under certain scenarios. So IMO regulations has been instrumental in providing that global rule set that gave you operators, owners, the playbook to operate in. Looking back, 2023, IMO member states unanimously agreed on a net zero target for 2050. At that time, it was welcomed by everyone as a great success and another landmark achievement of the IMO. But you all know that the IMO does not just make strategic objectives. The IMO works on binding regulations, which, once they enter into force, are globally applicable to provide a global level playing field. And that's what the IMO member states, the industry, has been working on since 2023. And we have seen quite a number of proposals in the past years identifying concrete measures to decarbonize, transform, digitalize the shipping industry and moving forward as an innovative sector. Within that process, within the decision-making process in the IMO, we have carried out an impact analysis that took place for almost a year. It was done largely by our colleagues in DNV, who did an assessment of all the proposals that were on the table, including those that were submitted by the industry, including those by more ambitious member states within the IMO. And DNV assessed all the impacts on the fleet. And we have seen in the outcome of that impact assessment that in the fuel mixes up to 2050, there will be, under every scenario, there will be a mix. Well into 2030s, well up to 2040s, there will be a mix of use of conventional fuels, blue fuels, synthetic fuels, biofuels. So nothing for the time being in the IMO framework has been disregarded. The other important point, I think, that the design and the discussions within the IMO have focused on is demand. Providing a clear demand signal. And that is, I think, where we've landed today. The agreement that was approved at the last session of MEPC in April sent a very strong demand signal to fuel producers about long-term certainty about the demand of the shipping industry. And that should trigger additional supply. It should accelerate FIDs, investment decisions, and provide certainty around offtake agreements. The framework further reinforces that kind of certainty by having integrated in the framework a mechanism of rewards. So those that first movers are rewarded. There's also, as you know, there's revenue that will be generated, and I think it's likely that a part of that revenue can be used in order to provide further certainty to fuel suppliers, to de-risk some of the capital investment in supply of renewable fuels. So that is, I think, what we're looking at, the basis that we want to work from with all of you. There's quite a number of details of the net zero framework that need to be further elaborated, including on the rewards, on the fuel certification, providing as much certainty in the shortest period of time as the IMO can do. And in parallel, and I think this is very important, it came up in the morning as well, we do not work in the IMO on these greenhouse gas reduction targets in isolation. There is a lot of work ongoing on safety regulations for new fuels, such as ammonia, for hydrogen. There's work ongoing on training for seafarers, and recently the IMO published new interim guidance for training of seafarers using alternative fuels. So all of this together should provide the regulatory stability under one global framework that provides certainty to the industry. Let me stop there, Chris. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Roel. And yes, you're right. Success is a team sport going forward from that point of view. You know, as you look at the deck plate level, we've got 3 owners on the panel, and you look at kind of where their challenge is, and obviously we're going to talk a little bit more about the fuels, which is probably maybe 60 to 70% of the challenge, but about 15 and maybe even more in terms of improved fuel consumption is use of energy efficiency devices and performance, and quite frankly the other 15 is kind of performance driven using data, voyage optimization. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that actually can be looked at right now as we begin to move forward and allow the fuel story to play out. Ioanna, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about kind of where you are relative to kind of that near-term focus on that, you know, whether it's 30%, 40% of energy efficiency, vessel performance, and then give us a little bit of perspective on how you're doing that as we begin to kind of look and wait patiently for the development of that fuel story.
Thank you, Chris. I will circle back to what you said, but I would like to make some comments on what Roel said earlier. The whole point of making something expensive is in order to make the alternative cheaper, to look cheaper. I always believe in speaking with numbers because they're not disputable. So I'll give you some supply and demand numbers so that we're all on the same page. And when we're looking at alternative fuels, we have to look at a life cycle analysis, because there's no point in having a well to tank and tank to wake if the first part is all gray. So if we were to decarbonize, also I want to say as well that there hasn't been any life cycle analysis for the fuels we're all discussing about, and no impact assessments as well. So let me go a little bit on what we will be we're needing in case we wanted to decarbonize shipping using green methanol. We would need 440, this is from NK, Class NK had a presentation a couple of months ago. So we will be needing 440 million tons. Right now we have 3.2. If we were to use green ammonia, we would need 470. We have 6.4. If we were to use green LNG, we would need 180. Now we have 0.01. If we were to use green hydrogen, we would need 70, and at the moment we have 1.5. So there's no fuel available. Also, we need to bear in mind that it's not just shipping decarbonizing, it's so many land industries as well. So this is something that we need to take into account. Polluting and paying is not a solution. And there are a lot, I'm going back to Chris's question now, there are a lot of efficiencies that we can start using and doing from today. So we don't need to wait till 2028. We can start doing things today. There are low-hanging fruits. First of all, new buildings built today are 30% more energy efficient than ships built 15 years ago. So already we have 30% efficiencies in CO2 savings. In addition to that, we have operational measures that can be used, just-in-time arrivals, speed optimization, weather routing, silicon paints, energy-saving devices on board the ships, and these can provide another 15 to 20%, as we were discussing with Chris a couple of days ago. So if you add all of this together, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that we should start using today. I mean, we should start regulating for these sort of efficiencies if we want to be serious about decarbonization. Now, going back to the penalties that we will be paying, it's estimated that in 2028 we will be paying, and I'm not talking about Fuel EU and the EU ETS, now it's just IMO level, about 15 to 30 billion will be raised in 2028. This will go up to 100 billion in 2035. Where will this money go? Who will pay? What's the governance of this sort of organization that is going to be handling such large amounts? Also, we have to bear in mind that we have 11,000 shipping companies in the world. Most of them are small and medium enterprises. All of these small and medium enterprises are going to suffer greatly, and we need those small and medium enterprises for competitive shipping. It's the worst thing to have consolidation and only big players. Also, the transportation costs are going to go through the roof. And maybe I can say a few words about LNG, or we should talk about it later.
Go ahead, you'll save me
I know it's down your playbook as well, so while we're at it. Okay, LNG is not perfect. It has a lot of issues, but it's proven, it's scalable. It's 20% less CO2 emissions than what we have today, than HFO. And, sorry, I lost my train of thought. And we have to bear in mind that it took 40 years to make an infrastructure for bunkering LNG around the world. And still, you don't have any bunkering stations in Africa, very few in South America, and very little in Australia and New Zealand. So we're talking about a Trump shipping, which is it's a global industry, and we need to be able to bunker around the world without any difficulties, because if you have no fuel, you can't move. So now that we're talking about infrastructure of the alternative fuels, you can imagine how long it will take to provide this sort of infrastructure. And we have to bear in mind that it's not only one fuel that we're talking about. So the final thing with LNG is a lot of people wanting to be proactive went ahead and ordered dual fuel LNG ships in order to be ahead of the curve, to pioneer. And by penalizing LNG, you're giving a very wrong signal to the early movers as to how we treat people that want to be fast in complying with this. So right. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Good. And Philippos, you're next. I know you've done a tremendous amount of innovative work on your designs. I mean, they're really incredible relative to energy efficiency. And I know that you are right. You're in the middle of kind of navigating through a short game, mid game, long game. Give us your perspective on where you are, where you're going, and how you see things.
Thank you, Chris. I start with what you said previously related to the energy-saving devices. When we start designing our first efficient ships back in 2012, you know very well that we have been optimizing the hull, optimizing the propeller with a specific design. We use Fandak propeller, Bosca fin, very advanced dynamic anti-fouling system. We used a lot of electric driven equipment like winches, like cranes, etc. And together with an electronic engine, we achieved close to 28% reduction of the energy consumption based on the previous, on the peers. Now with the latest designs after 3 evolutions, we reach almost 42% reduction based on on the previous, or the peer, or the model vessels of the previous generation. But I think we exhausted almost everything that we can do. In the new generation ships, we have quite a lot of new technology like waste heat recovery system. We are working now on the kinetic energy recovery system, especially for the gear vessels when they discharge. We have power bank using peak shaving to load the battery, and we may use this electricity to support the vessel for 48 hours without using any generators. We have done almost everything. The only way to achieve net zero, if not 2050, 2060, is to start now building ships, dual fuel, methanol, ammonia, eventually nuclear as well. If we don't start, we will be sitting here discussing again when it will be the next milestone in order to achieve that. One very important thing, I agree that the infrastructure is not there, the production is not scalable, but it's, as I mentioned before, we need a clear direction to incentivize both the shipowners for building dual fuel as well as the fuel producers. And I'm sure that the infrastructure of LNG can be utilized for any of the two prevailing net zero fuels because they are very similar. And one very small comment. Those having LNG-driven ships, they have an advantage. The medium term, because they will utilize the cheap fuel, it's cheaper than heavy fuel oil. And in the second stage, is the most easy vessel to convert to any net zero fuel required. You have the highest quality tanks. You have all the security and safety equipment, the double pipe in the nitrogen system, all are already in place. You need just to make the retrofit on the engine, which is maybe 300,000 per head. So this is my opinion. We have, if we need to decarbonize, we need all hands on deck.
Great, thank you. Spoken like a naval architect. Charis.
Thank you, Chris. So first, let me start by saying that it is great to hear from Roel that the IMO is planning to channel rewards back to the shipping companies that actually make investments, whether in dual-fuel vessels or green technologies. In my view, this is a make-or-break aspect of the regulation. If we want to get this right, we need to incentivize ship owners to make investments. Otherwise, we run the risk of being faced with a situation where we end up paying remedial units in order to comply with the regulation. Then we try to pass on this cost to our charterers try to pass on the cost to the rest of the supply chain, and ultimately, what have we done for the environment? We have just created inflation. Now to your question, Chris, with regards to energy efficiency, this has been a major area of focus for us. We are continuously upgrading our fleet. We are also renewing our fleet. In the past years, we have sold many older, less efficient vessels. Whenever we have the opportunity to dry dock a vessel, we deploy energy efficiency solutions, for example, replacing propellers, boss cap fins, pre-swirl ducts. Every time we have an opportunity, we aim to improve the energy efficiency of the vessel. Operational solutions, Ioanna also mentioned voyage optimization, just-in-time arrival, telemetry, vessel performance monitoring. These are part of our ongoing business. By now, all these objectives in terms of improving both operational and technical the efficiency of the vessel are integrated by now in the everyday work of our team and across different departments. We pay a lot of attention when it comes to hull maintenance. We try to keep the hulls of our vessels as clean as possible. During these past years, we have been testing ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, when it comes to hull cleaning. We see a lot of potential in that technology. And we do expect this technology to advance further. the payback of all the solutions in view of the adoption of the net zero framework is expected to become even more attractive. There is payback today, simply because we're saving on fuel cost, but from 2028 onward, as we will be faced also with compliance costs, this payback period will be shortened. And now looking a bit ahead in terms of trying to support the industry to further advance energy-saving technologies and solutions, last year we joined other large Shipowners in establishing the Maritime Emission Reduction Center here in Athens, where we will jointly try to advance the takeoff and the development of such solutions. Now, we do have to look a bit ahead when we talk about innovation and technology. You have mentioned, Chris, that energy efficiency can reduce greenhouse gas emissions up to only a certain percentage, and what happens thereafter, especially as we wait for the industry and other industries as well to develop green fuels. We see a lot of potential in the technology around carbon capture and storage. This is a proven technology on land. We are testing it also on board our vessels, and we see that we can have a reasonably good capture rate of carbon. We would like to see advancements in this technology as well in order to increase the capture rate, ideally reduce also the capital expenditure required, but also work around the issues of how do you store the carbon captured and how do you dispose of it. And very important, we would like to see from the IMO clarity as to how the GFI of a vessel can be improved when the vessel is fitted with similar systems, carbon capture and storage, but also other technologies, even wind-assisted propulsion. Thank you.
Now that as you listen and all the discussion about incentives and moving forward, and obviously how to manage this uncertainty between a short game, mid game, long game, can you give us a little bit of perspective relative to the process as you collect the money? Where will that how is that decision making going to be made relative to where are those investments going in terms of what swim lanes to get the most impact?
Thank you. And before I get to kind of the revenue part, just maybe on the energy efficiency, but also on the different fuels, because I think it's important to keep in mind that in all the IMO regulations, be it energy efficiency regulations or in the new IMO net zero framework, these regulations are both goal-based, technology neutral, fuel neutral. So the IMO will not prescribe what kind of energy efficiency technology needs to be used by the owners, by the operators in order to achieve energy efficiency targets, nor will you find in the IMO net zero framework which fuel you need to use in order to achieve the targets. This is left to the owners and the operators, allowing for the flexibility. That said, we do work on providing particularly the safety framework for the different fuels, for the different technologies. And I think nuclear was mentioned a couple of times. At the recent meetings of the Maritime Safety Committee of the IMO, proposals were put forward on the safe use of nuclear propulsion on board of ships. And so we have working groups within the IMO looking at the use of nuclear propulsion. Same for onboard carbon capture. We organized 2 weeks ago a technical seminar in the IMO, particularly focused on onboard carbon capture technology. And as we speak, the first outline of approval certification guidelines for onboard carbon capture technology are being prepared. So I think all of these options are on the table. Now, when it comes to the revenue, if you look at the legal framework that was approved back in April, there are two main areas where the revenue collected should be used for or dispersed to. One is, as we already touched upon, is to provide rewards to the industry, particularly to the first movers. What those rewards will look like in concrete terms is something that we haven't specified yet, and I heard some talking about offtake agreements, contracts for difference, or immediate kind of cash back to ship owners. So all of these options are on the table. We have received concrete proposals for using the revenue to reward industry in such a way. We will discuss these proposals in our meeting in October, immediately after the adoption, and we actually have proposals both from industry and member states on how to use those revenues, and I think they could be again used to provide a lot of certainty to both the owners as well as to the technology builders, yards, and fuel suppliers in the years to come. The other part of the revenue is earmarked to support particularly countries, developing countries, which are very intrinsic part of the discussions within the IMO, and to help these countries be part of the transition. And so the earmark or the money used for these countries can be used by them for fleet renewal, can be used to promote energy production, infrastructure in countries in the global south, in Africa, Brazil, in order to really ramp up production facilities and provide kind of the financial support to de-risk some of these investments, again, to increase the availability of fuels in the years and the decade to come.
Great, thank you. We're running out of time. In fact, we're a little bit over, but I do want to actually end with maybe a 15 or 30-second reaction from the panel about people, primarily people, because we talk a lot about technology, and I think everyone knows, I've always said this technology, unlike people, has no common sense, no instincts, no sense of humor. So it's about people, and it's about safety. Charis, why don't we go with you? Kind of a 15-second soundbite on, let's say, people, importance of people from your perspective.
Yeah. Training our people around green fuels and technologies is indispensable, but we should not put the cart before the horse. Right now, we do not have clarity as to what are the green fuels and the green technologies that will drive decarbonization. So once we have clarity when it comes to regulation and we are in a position to strategize around our investments, yes, we should train both our people on shore and our people on the vessels in order to have safety first and foremost, but also to be in a position to leverage technologies and fuels to ensure timely and efficient compliance with regulations. Thank you.
Thanks. Ioanna.
I think there will be a shortage of qualified crew, let alone chemical engineers that we're going to be needing on board our ships, especially handling fuels like ammonia, which is toxic, methanol, which doesn't have a flame, so people can be burning and nobody will understand. Anyhow, it's going to be very hard to find crew. I just want to close on saying that we need a just transition that protects trade and the environment. We need to involve other stakeholders alone, because the shipping industry cannot decarbonize if you don't have the infrastructure, the shipyards, the port facilities, the bunker manufacturers, the engine manufacturers, the cargo owners, the receivers, and the charterers. So they have to be part of the game. And we have a great opportunity, and we should seize it for protecting the environment, going forward, looking at feasible solution, and not just promising things that cannot happen, because this is the worst thing that we can do. Thank you.
Based on ICS studies, 800,000 seafarers out of the 1.7 million we have now, they need reskilling and upskilling. And unfortunately, the courses are not available. There are few academies, and I think one allocation of the fund should be focused on skilling and reskilling the seafarers, and not only. One very important note is that by 20 years down the line, the forecast of the seafarers required will be close to 2.8 million. And I think the resources are very limited now. Thank you.
Roel, you've got the last word.
That's great.
Nicholas,
For the IMO, as you all know, the human element, the transition, the just transition is key in all the work that we do. Our Secretary General states and emphasizes that every intervention that he makes, that this is key. And we have started working, as I mentioned, on interim guidelines for seafarers dealing with or operating on ships with using alternative fuels. We are reviewing the STCW code as we speak, and so this work will help. But I think it's also up to us all together here to send out the signal that the industry is in transformation, is innovating, is digitalizing, and that in that way also attract younger generations that see the shipping industry in that way as a very unique and interesting sector to work with together with us all. And I think that is for us a key message. And since I have the last word and on this point, on the 26th of April, I will run the London Marathon. And I will run the London Marathon for a charity, which is the Seafarer Society. And that is a society that actually looks after the well-being of seafarers around the world. It's a charity, so I'll send you the link later to all of you. And I'm looking forward for all of you contributing to me running the London Marathon in support of the seafarers. So thank you, Chris.
I think let's just continue to give everyone, this panel, a great hand. I think they've covered a lot of ground, Thank you very, very much.